All right. So Chelsea, um, I like horses, but I wasn't a horse girl, but mostly just because we didn't have horses growing up. And a friend of mine also really liked horses, but she was from a similar social or economic background as me, where her family didn't really have access to horse money either, but she also liked horses. And this is where her friendship with me, um, one of the things I taught her in our friendship was, hey, if there's someone that I really like who has access to amenities that I don't have, then
Mhm.
it motivates me to try to build our friendship outside of school to increase the odds of me getting invited to do that thing. And she was like, oh,
Mm.
okay, cool. So I taught her that trick, but I still think she maybe, I don't know if she was still a lot more like she had a lot more social anxiety than I did, or wasn't as outgoing as me, or maybe kind of was like horrified by like, wow, that sounds like so shallow and like you're using people. So she didn't use this technique. So that's to say, like, I had more experience with horses than she did. But
Mhm.
this was a friend, and she will come up many times because she was like a BFF through high school and early college years, and I was on the receiving end, unfortunately, of a lot of times when my mental models were not leading me to be the best person I should be.
Mhm.
And also just like that whole friendship that and I think we kind of talked about it before, but sometimes like with female friendships, I've always valued friendship a whole lot, but female friendships can be tricky because it depends on how much every one of your female friends has been or internalized like patriarchal values and how much they value like male approval and how much they're putting their hoes before bros and all that kind of stuff. Right. And so to
That's a very
me,
diplomatic way of saying all of that, but yes, I would
yes.
100% agree.
So, I was like, friends come first.
Yeah.
I felt friendship was way more important because I always had a pretty strong feminist streak, even though I didn't really see that that's what it was. But,
Okay.
and not in like the misandrist way where it's like men are like, well, it's because you hate men. It's like, no, it's just because I could very much appreciate and value the things that I could feel and experience and how I could be around other women, but also I could appreciate the frustrations. And I was very, very reactive and frustrated by like injustices. I hate being told like I can't do things just because I'm a girl. Again, these
Yeah.
are whole episodes we can have. So that's all to say, like, but this friend, she liked horses. I did too, but she didn't take me up on my pro tip of, hey, just become friendlier with someone who has horses
Yeah.
and see if they invite you. So, she kind of, but the other thing that happened a lot with this friend was she and I looked very different. I had like I talked about before, most of my life, I've always been like in the 90th percentile for height and weight for my age. It's always been proportionate with each other. But it's always been like I've always been bigger than peers. I was always taller than most of the other girls. I was always just bigger. So even when I was like just chubby and not even like fat, like just chubby, it was still felt like I was gigantic compared to peers because I would be taller and bigger. Most of my high school dates, I was taller than and bigger than, and I only went on dates with men in high school, and so or boys, but like I think I had two dates total where they were taller than me.
Mm.
So like I just always felt like so huge, right? And so then I had this friend who was very petite. She also had like she was very pretty. She was Latina, so she had like brown skin, brown eyes, brown curly hair. I've always like I told you and Elizabeth at our last book club, I've always really been jealous of people whose hair was just like, yeah, we're gonna be curly. Because my hair is wavy, but it's kind of more like it's just like it thinks about being curly sometimes. And
Yeah.
I wanted it to be like, no, I want you to be curly, damn it, but it never has been.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of like insecurities that I had that often got taken out on her because she was considered far more attractive by most everyone else because she did fit a lot more of like the beauty like standards and norms that have long existed, where she's
Yeah.
smaller than guys, she was petite, she was also very kind, and she was like good at listening, whereas I'm
Mhm.
like big and loud and opinionated.
Yeah.
And would do things like, hey, you're not better than me. I can burp louder than you can. And it's like, whoa, wow, guys didn't really find that attractive. What? Um, or like, you know how he's really going to be like, wow, she's so cool. I'm going to punch him so hard. And he's going to be like, she's so strong. I like that. No, never worked. Okay, like where cut to, I'm terrible at flirting. I like did so many misguided things to flirt. So as we were entering college, it had become like some friends in our immediate friend circle knew that she liked horses and wanted to ride horses. She had also kind of already figured out how to like lean into parts of her personality as like really easy social connections. Um, and I didn't. This is also where I was still like starting college, and I was like, when do I get to start reciting the poetry that I spent all that time memorizing in high school for these college parties we're going to have? And again, I was like, girl, that's not how college works. Um, so just a lot of things like that were happening around this time. So we started college, and oh man, I really wanted to date and have dating experience. I didn't want to get married.
Yeah.
I only ever dreamed about getting married when I was like, how do I escape my life? Like dreaming of like, if I get married, then I'll have someone to like, I'll have an excuse instead of just having to tell my family, like, I need space or that's not what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
Um, and that was the easier out in our religion. And so, um, but more than that, it was just like, I was like pretty normal. I just wanted to experience dating because that's just like what you're doing at that time of age. Like
Yeah.
that's like for a lot of people, that's an interest you have. And that's when you're starting to explore like sexual identity, sexual preferences, all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
so so we started college and again, I had gone in thinking like people are going to love how smart and intellectual I am. Even though inside I was like, but I think I might not be that smart. And then also like and then maybe I'll finally find someone because now we're going to be in college and men in college aren't going to care what my body looks like. They're going to know it's about what's inside of me. Also, like, duh, wishful thinking.
Yeah.
That, like, the guys who are going to like you in your body are going to like you regardless of age.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in like a pedophile way, but I mean like the same guys in college would have been
Yeah.
the same guys in high school who would have been
Yeah.
paying attention to me. But I didn't also appreciate that. So that also meant I wasn't as good at identifying possible people I could like try to connect with romantically. But again, here comes my friend who is a lot more of the ideal. She's shorter than me. She's petite. She's polite. She's not too loud. She's not very opinionated. She's not ever. And so she started to kind of house a lot of the bitterness I had about like being rejected.
Mhm.
And just that rejection of, gosh, why can't anyone love me? Why can't I be good enough?
Yeah.
And I hate it. It's all just because you're small and skinny and I'm not, which wasn't the
Mhm.
case. There were a lot of things that were keeping it from happening. But that was the one that I kept coming back to. So the reason we have horses behind us is one of the things that she was good at was again, like finding just like quick little, like, these are the parts of my personality that I use to like, hey, she's the girl who likes horses and really wants to be able to ride a horse someday. Like she knew how to like do those little quick pitches, those elevator pitches of this is who I am. Here's a part of my personality that you might want to latch onto
Yeah.
yourself out there. I've never been good at marketing myself. And so she was already like more inherently better at that too. And so hang on one second. I have a hair in my throat.
You're good. Yeah. 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 Go get it out.
I got it. It was a fuzz. I got it. I got it.
Okay. You
Okay.
did
I didn't even have to hack. I was really excited.
it.
Um, but yeah. So once we started college, so during like freshman orientation, we all had to sit in this like big auditorium and it's like all the new freshmen or whatever. Here's this. And we
Mhm.
were sitting there and there's this guy who like was sitting a couple seats down. And here's something else. Like, so this is kind of where a couple of mental models came in. One, I was so bitter about like everyone likes you just because you're shorter, but sometimes you just say the same jokes that I've told you louder and people laugh at them. And that was something too that if you've ever been that kid, it's super annoying when
Yeah.
people tell the thing that you said louder and then everyone laughs at them and thinks they're funny. You're like, that was
Yes.
my idea. And so that was already like something I had. And then like honestly, like I said, I was just kind of horribilizing her, which is another term I learned in college. But it just like I was kind of making her the totem for all of the bitterness and frustration and feelings of rejection I was having about dating. And this is also where like female friendships can be complicated because at the end of the day, I was like friends first kind of person, but she was still my like best friend that I'd like talk to about really personal things. But then I also sort of low key hated her because she was getting so much attention and I wasn't, and
Yeah.
I wanted it so bad. And then I would often handle it in like really snotty, bitchy ways. And so that's what our story is about today. So that's the context.
Okay.
In freshman orientation, also here's the thing. Like one of my bitternesses is like I am good at being outgoing
Yeah.
and friendly, and she just wasn't. And it's not because I'm like in my head, I was like, but if I'm better at this, then people should like me for being the friendly one. When again,
Mm.
that's not everyone's vibe, but in my head, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that yet. And so
Yeah.
I would often like be able to be like, oh, hey, hi, who are, like, my name's Casey, who are you, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like appreciate the fact that not everyone wants to talk. Not
Yeah.
everyone operates that way. Everyone values and is attracted to different things. None of this was registering at the time for me. And so we're sitting there in this auditorium. I like, there's this guy sitting kind of on the other side of her, and he starts talking and he's trying to talk to her, but she's like shutting down because she's like got a lot more social anxiety than I do. So then I start like just chatting or whatever. Or maybe he's actually on the other side of me. Now I'm remembering it was her, then me, then him. And I started talking to him to be friendly, but then when he turned to talk to me, he noticed her. And then he started wanting to talk to her
Oh,
a whole lot more. And here's the thing, I wasn't even interested in him, but it was the rejection that happened where I was like, you son of a bitch. I was the one being nice to you. Pay attention to me.
yes.
So, but he like clearly was becoming a lot more interested in her. And so that like little bitter gremlin started growing inside of me where I was like, everyone likes her just because she's shorter than me and she's prettier than me. And I'm the one who's doing like all the work. And I'm actually the one who's interesting and funny. And you're not even recognizing that. And like just doing like that whole like super bitter narrative in my head.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
just all born of rejection. I just feel rejected. I'm turning into like a horrible, mean person.
Yeah.
And so this is happening. And then they start the presentation and they're like, you have to be quiet. If we catch you talking, like we're going to call you out on it. And they did. Like if they heard people talking, they were like, do you, like they would stop and be like, do you need to leave? And so quickly,
No.
you can imagine how this whole auditorium full of people were like, okay, cool, don't do that. Cause that is kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing to get put on blast in front of
Wow. Yeah.
and so, and we weren't any of the people talking, but what that prompted this guy next to us to do was write her a note. And one of the things they connected it about was like they had both, like he came from a state where she lived for several years. So she was kind of from there. He was from there. They were from very different parts. They didn't know each other at all. But he wrote her a note and he was like, do you miss it? Like talking about the state. I because at this point I was like so hurt and rejected and hurt at her and also mad at him for like rejecting me. I was just like, what a dummy. And so I gave her that note and then she was just like, I had to pass the notes between them. And so it
Oh my
was like kind of that
gosh.
whole like, this is so dumb. I hate every part of this. And I was already like so mad. And so after that, I like he asked her out, of course. Like again,
Yeah.
no choice, but she was just like trying to be friendly and polite and like so she was just like I don't know and didn't know
Yeah.
what to do and she was still gaining a lot of dating experience. She had like had a couple like a boyfriend in high school but she hadn't really like dated a lot of people so like she was still trying to navigate what to do about that. And then because I was so hurt and bitter, instead of trying to be helpful, instead I was like ha ha ha, do you miss it? And I would bring it up all the time just to make fun of her and roast her. And again it was just one of those like super mean passive aggressive ways that I was trying to manage this
Oh,
feeling of rejection and anger and bitterness.
yeah.
Um, so that was one. And then I would just make fun of her about this all the time. And then um around like later that year, like that semester, she and I had like a couple of classes together. One of the classes we had together, we had just finished actually with psychology.
No way. Speaking of the
Yeah,
devil.
speaking of, but we had just come out of psychology, and I remember we were like talking a little bit before we were going to separate or whatever. But we carpooled, so sometimes like that's what we would talk. Is just like, hey, I'm leaving at this time. When are you leaving? Oh, you might need to ask someone else for a ride. Blah blah blah. But while we were just standing there talking, this man, like some guy, some college guy, comes up to her, and is just like, hey, I just wanted you to know, says to her, I'm standing there too of course, is like in my head, it's like he like pushed me out of the way, but he didn't. But that's like, again, my little rejection sensitive dysphoria felt like he shoved me out of the way to be like, but he came up and was like very sincere and said, hey, I just wanted to tell you you have a very pretty face. And I just wanted you to know that. And then walked off and then walked down the hall to wait for his class. That is an objectively kind and sincere thing to say. And it
Yeah.
takes so much courage to put yourself out there anytime at all.
Yeah.
Me being such a little rejected, hurt dickhead, what I did was like, And I started just like laughing and trying to like
Oh,
stifle a giggle very obviously. This guy is just down the hall. So I
yeah.
turned into such a nasty version of myself just because
Oh,
it didn't hurt. My friend was super embarrassed, number one, by the compliment, because even though compliments are really nice to receive, they can also be really hard to receive. And it is like, it was a nice thing to hear, but it's also like coming out of nowhere. And so she just like was dealing with the embarrassment of that.
yeah.
I rejected and hurt. And so instead of being like a friend or even just like a cool human being in that moment, instead I was like snickering and this guy could hear it. And
Yeah.
I like to this day, I'm like, oh, you piece of shit, Casey. Like, I really wish you could have shown up different then. But that's how I showed up. That was the reality of it.
Yeah.
So then by the end of that year, I still hadn't really had good dating experiences, but she was getting so much attention. And so my bitterness was just really high. And my feelings of rejection and hurt were really high.
Yeah.
Um, and again, people knew that she liked horses. A group of our friends for like her birthday or something arranged for her to go on a horseback riding trip, which was so thoughtful
That's
and nice.
so nice.
I know. And I was just being such a butthead so
Oh,
often and like so passive aggressive. And I would be like, it was like most of the time I would show up and be the friend that I had been and try to like be the friend that, she deserved and like be a good friend to her because that was really something I prioritized. But
yeah.
the days that I felt especially hurt, I would just be just like I said, such a butthead. I was just such a turd.
Yeah.
And so by the end of that year, though, the word had gotten out that she liked horses, or maybe this is like the start of the next year. She liked horses. People knew that about her. This guy started college and he showed an interest in her, and we kind of met him through friends, like he was a friend of a friend kind of thing. And so we'd met him already like right before school started, just like at a friend's house that we were hanging out or something. And so we met him, and it was again one of those moments where I wasn't interested in him at all, but it was more at this point I was just collecting all the times that I felt hurt and rejected,
Mm,
all the time people were liking her instead of me.
yeah.
And even though he was not remotely attractive to me, or like he was nice, but I was not interested in him in any sort of way.
Yeah.
I clocked though that he liked her, and immediately I was like, nope. And I was so mad, and the bitterness started to grow. And so here's another moment of someone trying to be sincere and putting themselves out there, and me showing up as a complete and total asshole. Instead of like just recognizing that my feelings were hurt
Yeah.
and how to work through them.
Yeah.
Um, he would come and visit her and chat with her, like throughout the day on campus. And she was polite, but again, she still was having a hard time knowing how to like tell guys she wasn't interested. And I was like, he likes you. And she was just like, well, he hasn't said anything. And I was like, yeah, but he's like saying it in other ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
else is he stopping to see several times during the day? And so mostly, and part of why I was pointing it out, like when I was being with the nicer friend, I was pointing out like, hey, I know that you don't like him. And so I just want to point this out because either gear up for having to know how to let him down because he's definitely going to ask you out, or figure out a way to go ahead and tell him it's not going to happen. Um, because part of it too is like she thought he was nice, but she wasn't really interested in him. So like when he would find her at the library and stuff, it really was just taking away time that she was trying to do work versus, so it's also like the way to get that time back is just to let him know nothing's going to happen kind of thing. And so she was still kind of figuring that out. But then I came into like wherever she was and she was holding this drawing and I was like, what is that? And it was a charcoal drawing of a horse. It was not this one. This one is from a 16th century Dutch painter whose
Okay.
last name I think was something with two O's and then an RT. I found it on the Art Institute of Chicago's public domain art
Okay.
art. So it's public domain, but he like, and it had a very nice note. And he said, I heard you liked horses. I like to draw. I hope this is okay. I'm not the best artist, but I hope that at least makes you smile or something like just, again, a very sweet and thoughtful thing to do.
Yeah.
He gives her this drawing. And I was like, see, I told you he liked you. And again, instead of being like a nice friend and instead of being gracious, I was a total dick. And I was like, ha, 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 horses, what are you going to do with that picture? You should put it in a calendar. Ha ha. And I like teased her relentlessly about this. She
Oh,
finally ended up having to have a conversation with him about it. Like, hey, I appreciate it. I'm just not that interested in you, but I will keep this
yeah.
drawing. It is a very nice drawing unless you want it back. And he's like, no, have it. I gave it to you, kind of thing.
Oh,
But then forever, I would just like, then sometimes when I was being like feeling more like really shitty and wanted to like try to make her feel bad too. I would
yeah.
like draw a really terrible picture of a horse and then hand it to her and be like, "Oh, I thought you might like this because I heard you like horses," and found endless ways to make fun of her for something that she didn't deserve to be made fun of and for something that this guy genuinely didn't deserve to be made fun of for either.
Yeah.
But I got a model or like I got a prop for you because cut to, and this is another like future episodes. Don't worry, this is a mental model that we are going to address. Or just like my thoughts around karma and the way that I really believed that karma was God trying to tell me to quit being such a jerk,
Yeah.
and like I was getting comeuppance really quickly. Um, and cut to this was years later, and I still like I was. This is when I was doing missionary work, and I had lived in this one area, knew this one guy, he was nice. And I mean, you could just tell he was kind of lonely, but we just like, we were like, we would talk to him and like visit with him. He ended up coming to church and stuff. And so we got friendly with him. And so when I moved to a different area, I would still write him letters just because I was like, well, hey, I wonder how he's doing. I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
And so I also had this like idea in my head. One of the mental models I had was that like I was very forgettable. Again, another episode, we'll talk about that later. But so I constantly was like worried people were going to forget who I was. So
Okay.
I let me make sure to send him a picture so he can remember who I am. Even
Okay.
though I literally had just left that area maybe a month before. But I was like, but I'm forgettable. So let me make sure he knows who I am. Anyways, so I sent him a picture of me and just like some little girl that I had met, but it was just like it was like, oh, cool, I have this picture. I just printed it. I'll just send this to him.
Yeah.
And then he sent me back a letter and he sent back some drawings because he also did charcoal drawings.
Oh my
Except
gosh.
charcoal, it made me think of on he did a charcoal drawing of me and the little girl, and it made me think of from Napoleon Dynamite when he asks her to prom. But like it's a very flattering picture. It's me and this little girl.
Oh wow.
It's one of them.
Especially in charcoal, that's a hard
Yeah.
medium.
He was very talented. But then he also drew some other pictures that he sent me.
Oh my God.
So I got my own charcoal horses.
Wait, take off the background because I can't see it.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, I'm glad you told me that. I was trying to hold them close so you could see, but I guess it didn't work. Okay, hang on. None. This one? Like very good,
Oh my gosh, this is
talented
amazing.
drawings. Yeah, good drawings. And the other one that I showed you that you couldn't quite see, this one.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So in the long run, I did get my own charcoal drawings. I just had to be a complete ass before and like just totally take out feelings that people didn't deserve who were
Yeah.
just trying to be sincere and were trying to navigate dating, which is always awkward in whatever stage you're in with
Yes.
each other. I got my own, and then it was when I got that I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't write him again. Because I was like, I'm kind of worried because he also wrote some other things too that made me think like, oh, he might have read more into like what I thought what was happening. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna really write him back for a while and let the feelings cool off. Um, anyway, but yeah, and so I got to have my own charcoal horse drawing. I just had to be
Nice.
a really huge brat who felt
Nice.
rejected and let my little rejection gremlin be a complete passive aggressive asshole to so many undeserving people first before I got my charcoal horse drawings.
I think the biggest takeaway that I'm getting here is if you like someone, you need to give them a charcoal horse drawing.
How you do it?
Oh, have you did you and the friend like did you ever talk about like the gremlin phase of like the of Casey?
Yeah, I would like there would come times, and again, this is why like thankfully she still was friends with me because I really, she sometimes was like, I mean, and obviously there's times that I could tell you where like she was going through her own stuff and kind of took it out on me.
Yeah, yeah,
Sometimes that's just the nature of friendship at that age
it
because you're
is.
young and still learning things. But we would end up having conversations where I would point out how I just felt like I was so like no one wanted me and I would be forever alone and stuff like that. And
Mm,
so it just would like kind of sting. And especially where it was like it hurt, especially when I felt like I was putting in all this effort to like make these guys feel included and then they'd end up liking her and no one ever wanted to
yeah,
like me and stuff like that. So this was like a running thing, like a conversation
yeah,
she unfortunately had to hear from me a lot on. So like we did have very many versions of this conversation and I
okay.
did apologize quite a bit because I would recognize after like, yeah, that was a really terrible way to show up. Like that's
Yeah,
not cool. I get that your feelings are hurt, but it's not cool to take it out on other people.
yeah,
And so like um, that's kind of like, so we had a lot of conversations. So we would end up having conversations like it, which did help because inevitably, like after the do you miss your state kind of note, like we had a version of that conversation. We'd already had versions of this conversation before.
yeah,
Um, and so then when we'd have this, like I'd have to apologize because once again, like that little rejection gremlin like reared its head and
yeah,
he totally mean she was already like ugh, like she knew what it was at this point
yeah.
she would also be quicker to be like, Casey, and like kind of call me out when I was being
That's
terrible.
nice.
So it was nice. So even though like after the horse thing, and I would occasionally do stuff like that, she'd just be like, Casey, and then kind of just say something that let me know that like I I get where this is coming from, but also this isn't cool. And so then I could be like, oh, okay. But
Yeah. That's like a good friend though. I feel like if you're able to show up like just as you are, gremlin or not, and be able to like repair and have those conversations afterwards or have them call you out, it feels more like a sister in some sorts. But
yeah.
yeah, growing up and like not having guys like you and having guys always express interest in like other
Mhm.
girls and just like wondering like what is wrong with me, like obviously it's the way that I look and like all of the
It's everything about me. It's this, it's
yes,
like anything that you've already been dumping on yourself about.
yes,
Like, yeah, and this is also, it's because of this, but it's also because of this, and also because of this.
yeah,
And then for me, you throw in like how I would often, like one of the very deep mental models I had was God only tolerates me at best, and he's always low-key mad at
oh
me. Then it
yeah,
was also like, yeah, and this is also your comeuppance because you are just inherently a piece of shit. Obviously, that's shame.
yeah,
But I mean, it's just like when you're already feeling kind of rejected in some way, your brain is really good at being like, and here, remember, here are all the other ways that you're unlovable. And you're like, oh,
yes, yeah, there's something about like growing up in a shame-based environment that like definitely impacts every aspect of your life. I feel like the a lot of the mental models that I had growing up and are still working through, a lot of them like are tied back to shame.
mhm,
Yeah, but it makes sense. And like it's nice to be able to find friends who, because I definitely was not that friend who could have those types of conversations. My exit strategy was like either finding people who we can have those types of conversations and like we could enter the arena and kind of like hear each other out, or find friends who are just like very like hard to push their buttons or just like very
right.
passive. And then the friends that I like bumped up against, I would just like cut off. Like I had no frame of reference of like how to have a prepared conversation or like how to tactfully like um call someone out. So it's nice that
Well,
well, yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say I was very lucky. And like, I mean, truly, like those are friends that I really loved. I was very lucky and fortunate to have the friends that I had in college. And obviously, too, there were like a lot of my early college years, especially. And there was a lot going on. They're not friends that I'm like close to now. And it's not, like I've never had like some people who can have those like friend breakup conversations. I'm like, what is that like? Because I've never had
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But they're not friends that I'm close to, mostly just because we've all grown apart and done our own things.
yeah,
And there were like our own versions of like falling outs and stuff like that, where that some
yeah,
are more than others.
yeah,
while we were kind of in that stage of life, we were putting in the effort for friendship. And obviously, sometimes that the effort that you can and will spend on a friendship will change because of different circumstances and
Yeah,
stages of life. I was very fortunate that we were in a stage of life where she was willing to show up and spend the time on me that she did. Again, she didn't do it flawlessly. There were plenty of times too that I could be like, well, she did this. But I was lucky because obviously I had a lot of stuff that I was going through and I
yeah,
didn't know how to manage my feelings in a good way. I wasn't
yeah,
aware of mental models or how they were affecting me. And I was lucky that she did like show up with enough kindness and forgiveness. And so again, part of like we had these like versions of repair conversations, and it worked for the time, but part of probably why it didn't work long run was not only because we had different lives that we ended up living anyway, but I, at the time too, just truly didn't know what the heart of the matter was. And
yeah,
we talk about it, but it's like you can't really ever resolve something that you're not aware of is existing. And
yeah.
well, instead, it was kind of like me trying to figure out what to do with this bitterness and rejection and hurt I felt that I didn't feel like I deserved,
Mm,
not realizing that that's really kind of what it was. And then also
yeah,
forgetting how I can like keep that feeling as that's my own feeling. That's not her feeling or responsibility.
yeah,
But the issue isn't like her or these guys or this. This is actually what the issue is, and this is how you work through it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, friendships, female friendships. And
Yeah.
honestly, like, kudos to you for, um, yeah, just kudos to you for getting the help and doing that work too, and being able to look back and see things the way that they were and to
Yeah.
track like that progress and growth. Because, and not get stuck in like the shame of it either. I feel like that's a very easy thing to do,
Mhm.
is just like look back and like continually to shame yourself and to
Yeah.
not leave that space for like growth and forgiveness and self-compassion of just like, we had no idea what we were doing, and I hope that like your friend too was able to have some sort of version of that, because I know that you
Yeah.
worked really hard on figuring all of that out. And if she looks back at this, best case scenario, it's like, I don't know, that maybe this is just what I tell myself when I think about some of the falling outs that I had with a few people. And I look back at those things and I was like, man, I just like have so much compassion for both of us, because
Mhm.
we're trying to navigate something that felt really hard and complex, and we both weren't showing up in the best way because we both like had no idea, we couldn't name the issue. And um we just had to, it was best for us to separate, but it was a catalyst for some like great introspection and to be able to kind of start me on the path of like figuring out what was actually going on and why I was continually seeing the pattern kind of repeat itself.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, like she and I have grown apart and it's been a long process. It like, she's married, she has kids now. I've never
Yeah,
been married. I've like been a lot more like I have had a very different life than she's had as far as how our future has progressed from
yeah,
like 20s on. And I will say this, like there definitely we had already like been drifting apart even before she got married. And there was obviously like anytime like a friendship, and this is like again another episode I can do on like friendships fading out and stuff like
yeah,
that. Um like there we've run it like it's not that she's completely cut off from my life or I'm from hers, and there are times
yeah.
she'll reach out to me, like she'll still reach out and say happy birthday to me a lot.
Oh,
And
that's
I say
so
that to
fun.
her. Or like a song will come on the radio and it's one that we used to like sing all the time. Like I think one time I was trying
Aw,
to make her learn the harmonies for Dreams by the Cranberries. And
aw,
so I would try to make her sing it with me all the time. And she didn't love singing the way that I do.
yeah.
And was a nice friend and was trying to do that. And so like one time, like she like maybe a couple years ago, the Cranberries was on the radio and she's like, hey, this popped on and made me think of you. I'm glad I got to have you as a friend in my life. You like really helped high
That's
school better.
amazing.
Like so she's very kind and like there is still that love and we are very different people now.
Yeah,
And if we meet now, like if we met now because of where our lives are at, would we form a friendship the way we did then? No. That's also one of the special things about these friends
yeah,
that form during these different stages of your life is because they see who you were at that moment. And obviously, who I was at that moment is not the version that I would want to live as forever. And
Yeah.
thankfully, we can learn and change and grow. And I do have
Yes.
compassion for me because, again, like we've talked about this whole time in these episodes, like I didn't know what was going on inside me. I didn't know
Yeah.
that my brain worked in this way. I didn't know how to do things that involved feelings and how to process them. Like all of this stuff was just uncharted territory. I had so much shame that I was like living under constantly, but I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
And so, and she had her own things going on too. Like I can fully appreciate that. Like she had plenty of things going on too.
Yeah.
And we did have a lot of similarities from like our families, but there were also things that were very unique to her,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So like it's one of those things where I do have a lot of compassion for both of us, even though obviously I was sure to point out how truly terrible I could be in those moments because objectively I was just very terrible in those moments. Like I do also feel compassion because I understand now what was driving it. I
Yeah.
didn't have time. And that's the truth too, is sometimes when you don't know what those emotions are that you're having, the way that it leads you to show up are in ways that you're like, that's actually nothing that aligns with any of my values. That's
Yeah.
not the person I want to be. This is
Yeah.
not a version of myself, but it is a version of myself that exists
Yeah.
because it's something that I did do.
Yeah.
It's just that that's also why it's nice to become aware of like, hey, what are these mental models that I have? What does make me think that I'm unworthy of love if I have any issues with shame, you know? And you start kind of addressing that because then you can make your life more congruent, which is like, hey, this is actually what I value and this is how I want to show up. And so now that I know that, let me see how I can address or manage or work through whatever these feelings or mental models are so that I can show up the way that I want to, even if my feelings are hurt or even if I'm feeling unlovable and rejected, kind of.
Yeah. I
But
love that.
I didn't have that skill set. My friend, unfortunately, and these very kind and bold gentlemen who anytime and like I again we've talked about before like when it came to dating I didn't mind asking guys out but
Yeah.
anytime you ask anyone out it is a moment of vulnerability because there is always the chance of rejection.
Yeah.
So like these guys just trying to put themselves out there, my friend having to all of a sudden be put on the spot and then me just being like right next to her. Like, ah, man, so much cringe about that. But like it is what it is. And I'm glad we've all grown and I'm glad that I can learn from it. But it is one of those moments where I was like, well, thank goodness, because that is not who I wanted to be. That is not how I want to be. And that was not something anyone involved in that situation deserved, myself included. I didn't deserve to show up that way because it's not who I am. They didn't deserve it because they were just trying to be sincere with feelings they were exploring.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that is a good way to send us off of like a good, pretty bow that you just wrapped on this beautiful, uh, rolled up charcoal drawing of a horse.